lot.
There goes my.
I was gonna get out to well, I saw it when I came in for taking a little while. We used to say big on the screen. Now it's in my phone. So anyway, I'm so sorry. But yes, you're right. They have to have it on all brands. Okay. I was working in the yard and my ears were wide open. That's why I know there's probably an offer coming. Well, I know I saw it with. Yeah, I figured. So I'll keep you posted. Okay, great, thanks. Now I don't have to come into your office after.
No.
Oh, Mike's here.
Oh, but I know what they're here for,
What?
about the RV parking.
Oh, I'm sure. Rubio, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Claudine's here too. Hi, Claudine.
There's a seat over my mic. You got 1 minute. If people want to speak, we're going to let, because I think some people are here to speak on one of these at least.
Who are you? Here we go.
I'll call the meeting to order. Richard, do you have the roll call? All right, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by our Council President, Madeline Seymour. Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is an action item to award the contract for collection agency services. Oops, I thought you were there.
Getting a request for proposals.
It's been many, many years since we did a request for proposals and did a new solicitation for our collection services. We did an RFP and we got 4 responses. And staff recommend the awarding of the contract to Professional Credit Services.
Okay, do I have any questions from anybody?
17.5% is normal
Yes.
Okay.
That was the best rate of the,
of the proposals? Okay.
by quite a bit. And the references were, when we checked references and their references are really good. Governments are very happy with their service.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to accept all proposals and award contract to Professional Credit Services. I have one question, Dan.
Yes.
When we're making these motions and we're accepting all proposals, we have not seen them. So is it possible that we can either take that out of the motion and or if we could have copies of the proposals?
Sure, the acceptance of the proposal is a technical matter. There's sort of technical specs that we do.
Right.
So staff do that as a gatekeeping function before we review those.
Well, we
Right.
normally get,
We can take them out. I'm not sure why that
Well,
got put in this motion. We do it with certain kinds of bids,
Yeah. Oh, I know that.
but generally not with RFPs like this.
Okay.
but don't we usually make it into 2 motions? One motion to accept the proposals and then the next motion to award?
Yes, with bids, we normally
That's
do.
not bids.
We don't need to do that now.
Yes,
Right.
all right, do I hear a second?
Final second. I'll third
Been moved in by Madeline, seconded by Brian, and that we accept proposals and award the contract to Professional Credit Service. All in favor? Unanimous. Is Jeff on there?
Yes.
Okay, then can we see him? Well, how are we going
Is
to
he
know if he
unmuted?
votes?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to keep him unmuted, June? Thank you.
Okay, the next item is resolution 23-07, allowing recreational vehicles as temporary housing. And I'm guessing that there are some people in the audience who want to talk about this. So, and we'll let you speak for 3 minutes. So I don't know, somebody named Nancy.
Should we have the staff report first, Madam Mayor?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's pretty quick anyway, and I figured that's why everyone was here. So I'll just give you a brief overview. So back in February, we looked at the city of Springfield's guidelines that they put together. This was a program they came up with. And we looked to see if it was something that might work here in Bandon. We do frequently get requests. June, as the city recorder, fields those requests for RV permits. And currently our code allows you to get one month residential permit in a calendar year. We do know that there are some people who can't find housing in Bandon and are living in those RVs. Probably permanently over the summer. Kristen and I drove around looking at RVs in town. It's hard to tell if people are living in them or not, but we did send out a letter to almost 50 people, letting them know of our policy here and that if they are living in the RV right now, they need to stop living in it. So this seemed like an opportunity, especially as the summer months. We see more businesses requiring more employees. We may need more people to be working in our businesses. This is a way for the city council to do a temporary like non-enforcement act of our code. And then we put together some guidelines for you that, you know, people would still have to follow. It's not a free for all. So those guidelines generally are that RVs are not permitted on vacant lots. They have to be roadworthy. All personal items have to be kept away from view. Property owners cannot charge rent, but may ask RV occupants to contribute towards utilities. And then we would allow one RV per single family dwelling. The RV must be parked in the same sort of compliance that we require now. So in certain setbacks from buildings and fences, so you're kind of kept away from those. Still no connections to the city's sanitary sewer system, so they'd have to go off-site to dump, and that no portable toilets would be allowed. And that the RV can be provided with electricity via an extension cord, no generators, and that they have to provide garbage service to the RV occupant. So, do you have any questions?
I do. Where were the 50? Give me a general idea where these 50 were located.
All over. I mean, we see
I
them.
mean, a
Yeah.
street, 101, private property, vacant
Oh,
lots.
sorry, all on private property. So there are
In
folks,
Bandon.
yeah, who have RVs and they could be, our code allows without a permit. You can have like a residential visit of just a week. So we don't know, they may be just having someone stay
Oh,
at
so
their
you don't
home.
know, you just,
We
No,
sent
definitely.
a letter letting people know what the rules were, just in case they didn't know. We did see some things that weren't permitted, so we kind of pointed those out. But yeah, all on private property.
thank you.
Anybody else have any questions before we open it up? Okay, now somebody named Nancy. Okay, do you want to come up here to the front?
The fact that.
You've got to give your name and
The fact that temporarily is not defined in the ordinance is problematic. There seems to be no time frame on the ordinance. In other words, should it be sunsetted or reevaluated after a certain period of time? This could create a slippery slope. This would create a host of social problems, from health and safety issues having to do with inadequate sanitation and increased fire hazards. In other words, blocking driveways in case fire department has to come. This will affect the integrity of the residential neighborhoods. This appears to be just a Band-Aid, a poorly thought out solution to a much bigger problem. More emphasis should be placed on creating affordable housing, including allowing multifamily dwellings within designated areas of the city. Without strict guidelines on allowable RVs and sanitation, this ordinance could result in eyesores developing. Enforcement will need to be done to prevent this. Many of our streets are narrow, for example, Beach Loop Drive, and RVs and driveways would probably result in more cars parking on the street. Should density of RVs be considered in this ordinance? An example being having an RV in many driveways on any particular street. This will decrease the value of nearby properties, which is unfair to the neighbors.
This could put a strain on our utilities, especially water and sewer. Would occupants of RVs pay real estate tax like we all do? How would that work? What image will Bandon project to tourists visiting our area? In closing, the guidelines stipulated in the exhibit will be ineffective without adequate enforcement. Does the city of Bandon have the capability, as in staffing, to enforce these guidelines? Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I guess somebody named Mike. I don't know why we didn't get last names, but we didn't.
Somebody named Mike, I'm here.
Give your name at full.
My name is Mike Malloy. I live at 820 Seabird Drive. Similarly to what the previous speaker just talked on, I have some concerns about this. Again, the definition of temporary, I don't see it in what I've read that was provided. So I'm very curious to know what this means. Is temporary, city I used to work for, temporary meant a year. Currently, we allow 30 days, so on and so forth. So I think that that's really, really important. To go along with temporary, does that mean you can stay at one for a temporary period and then go to another residence and stay? I was thinking that what was stated in the paperwork that I read, that many of these people are families. That might be something that if this is going to be considered, that should be required so that we don't have me inviting 30 friends over. Something to consider. So definition of temporary and also criteria, who can stay? Can it just be someone off the streets? How is that enforced? How do we know? Maximum number of occupants. My past career, I was very concerned with safety. RVs are not meant to be lived in. As a matter of fact, if you look at the standards, they recommend you do not live in them because of the wall coverings and the like. Are we taking on something that maybe we shouldn't as a city, allowing this and calling it a domicile? Again, I'm not smart enough to know the answer to that, but that is a consideration. Nowhere in the paperwork that I read was there any mention of water. Where are they getting it? It says you can hook up an electrical cord. And then that brings me to infrastructure. We're already in dire need of water. We can't afford groundwater. We can't afford storage, so on and so forth. And now we're bringing on, without adding infrastructure, without adding any cost measures, if you will, recovery measures, we're using more water. I know we're not going to get an increase of 60,000 people in their RV, but it is something I think we need to consider strongly. Another big one in my book, Seabird Drive has become it's a freeway now, as you all know. Our police department has set out a traffic control measure a couple of times, and speeds out in front of my house are oftentimes 50 easily. Again, coming back to, adding more people, what's going to happen to trips per day? Who enforces this? We're barely able in this small city to keep up with enforcement of things that we already have on our plate. I just worry about our departments and how we're going to enforce that. More importantly than the enforcement, quality of life. The reason we picked up everything and moved here is quality of life. I'm really not interested in seeing my dream of quality of life go down to remedy this problem, which I recognize is a problem nationwide, but I don't want to own it. If you park RVs on lots, be it on a driveway or otherwise, if it meets the setback requirements and the like, that's going to potentially result in a lot of off-street parking. It was mentioned by our previous speaker that we have some very narrow streets. Where are these cars going to go? Going back to my earlier statement about how many people are allowed in there, are we going to allow 6 people in a 1970 Winnebago? And if so, where do those cars go? Additionally, safety. Hotels don't allow 6 people in, so are we on a slippery slope with that as well? Tense, my God, speed up, Irishman. Urban infrastructure, is there an impact on schools? Do we take these people in as residents? Do we have a maximum capacity like we do on VRBOs? And does this resolution sunset after we bring more housing to the city? And I guess I'll quit there at 10 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, next, Claudine.
Claudine Hunthausen, 3795 Beach Loop Drive. I got up at 6:30 to make my little list, and I was glad that some of the things that I was concerned about were brought up by our 2 previous speakers. as well as my name and address for the record, I'd like to add a few details in case anyone is wondering about my qualifications to speak to this issue. I've sold real estate in Vermont. I had a broker's license in Wisconsin for 15 years. I sold my own properties in Seattle and my parents' home in Arizona. I've worked in management for both multifamily housing and commercial office space in Wisconsin, and I'm a graduate of the National Appraisal Institute. I served on the Bandon City Council for 12 years and attended as many classes as possible for training and education at the League of Oregon Cities conferences for 10 years. If anything, I've learned to ask important questions. So here are a few. Where are the minutes of recent planning commission meetings? I find no evidence of discussion or study regarding this topic, which most certainly is a land use issue. I looked through Bandon's municipal code for provisions for emergencies. I find no evidence of discussion or wait a minute. It seems to me that when we talk about emergencies in municipal code, we're talking about health and safety. I don't see as how housing for temporary housing is an emergency. I'm wondering how this resolution has been researched in terms of potential impact. And I think that was brought up by the two previous people. How many RVs will be permitted and for how long? Has the research been done to determine impact to water and sewer demand? Folks who are building homes contribute to systems development and are required to pay to add their homes to the municipal grid. This is something different, yet it will make a difference. Will there be any size or condition requirements? What's to prevent the use of a dilapidated RV that is left behind when someone is finished using it? I think the city has had some experience with that in the past, and it cost us $7,000 to clean up a couple of lots where people had pulled in and lived in RVs. What is to prevent anyone from parking an RV and vacationing for the summer? Will occupants bring children? What might their needs be for school and or daycare? 40% of American families have dogs these days. What rules or measures will be provided for noise, waste, or confinement? Not all pet owners are responsible, and anyone who has listened to a distressed pet barking for hours knows this can present a problem. How many cars will accompany a given unit? That was brought up. And where are they going to be allowed to park? What rules can be enforced to limit occupancy? That was also mentioned. And they should be appropriate for the size of the RV. Suppose you have an RV and you have maybe 4 people that decide that they're going to share, and maybe 2 work an early shift and 2 work a later shift. Are we going to permit that kind of thing? The essence of this resolution seems precipitous and should be removed from the council agenda until the aforementioned questions can be satisfactorily addressed. Then and only then, notices should be sent to abandoned property owners because their property values are at stake, and enough information to help them understand the impact of this resolution before it can be considered. Surely the voters will want to have a say. This is a land use issue, not strictly policy, and it should be decided accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mike Clausen, 1455 Pelican Place, Bandon. I too am a former city councilor, and I've tried my hardest to not appear before you and second guess or spread my opinions too much, but this one has rang some bells with me, and I talked to somebody on the planning commission to see, how it was vetted, and they hadn't seen the thing, so that just left red flags as red flags waving. But in particular, the nature of this, I happen to think it's a good idea, and God, we got to do something to do this. But because it's of what it is, it seems like it should have, a sunset on it, a 6-month deal, a year deal, whatever you thought was appropriate, because it should be evaluated along the way. And I think there's certainly going to be some problems. There always is. So what? Mostly those things can be handled, and maybe all of these things can be handled. But for an emergency measure to go in and not have a sunset on it, concerns me greatly. And generally, I'm in favor of this, and we can work things through. But boy, would I like to see a 6-month or a year termination on it. And if it's been working, it'll be very easy to get it renewed. If it's not working, it might be hard to get it thrown out. Sunsets take away a problem. I hope you'll consider that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Next.
Hi, I'm Mike Posada. I live at 2664 Cascare Avenue, and I appreciate the time here. I can definitely understand, and I'm sure everybody else can understand the need for temporary housing, but there may be a lot of unintended consequences to something so broadly worded. First thing I think of is the covenants, codes, and restrictions that already exist in all the subdivisions. Are these subdivisions part of this idea? Well, then that, civil agreement that everybody entered into as they bought in their subdivision, after carefully studying those restrictions, do their rights then get thrown out? Just a question. And I just have one thing about enforcement. I'm wondering how the city would enforce a really poorly framed RV situation that gets worse and worse. And I won't belabor the point, but we're in the middle of a serious code violation that Richard's worked very hard on for 6 months, but there's still no resolution. I mean, we're talking about a loose pit bull, garbage strewn everywhere, no garbage service. And we've tried in the best we can to do it all through the channels. And I know Richard's working really hard on this, but 6 months later, there's no resolution. So what happens when this junk RV is sitting on a property and there's no one to enforce the rules that are put into place? Because that's been my experience. And I just think it's really tough when you introduce something that has really broad guardrails. You're going to have 95% of the people absolutely following the rules, doing really good. You're going to have about 5% of the people doing nothing like that and really wrecking it for the rest of us. And that's been my experience. I thought I was safe moving to a subdivision that had covenants, codes, and restrictions. Well, I find out that civil agreement really has very little teeth, and the city's having a very difficult time enforcing laws that are on the books. So if they're already having this much trouble enforcing laws that are on the books, how are they going to deal with 5 or 10 RVs out of, well, whatever, even one RV that's just a blight on the neighborhood? It's just a hard road, and everybody understands the need for affordable housing. But this may need some study, some careful criteria. I mean, think of all the things that we do when we ask for a building permit. We go through a really rigorous process with the city. Maybe they need a pretty rigorous process for this, including even a bond. Maybe these people should bond this so that if there's a problem, there's some recourse here, because right now my understanding is the city and the code officer, Richard, is taxed. He's trying his hardest, but he really has a hard time, doing this kind of work. Thank you very much for your time.
Could I ask where your neighborhood is? Where's
I
that?
live on 2664 Cascara.
I know, but I don't know where.
That whole neighborhood has been, I'll let Richard detail the problem at Franklin
Well,
Avenue.
I will
Is it
want
off
to know about
Seaboard?
that later.
Ocean Terrace Phase 4.
Okay.
It has covenants, codes of restriction. There is one property in that neighborhood. I won't belabor the point. Richard's well aware of it. He's been doing a great job, but it still has no reconciliation, and our neighbors are even scared to walk by that house. And it's,
We will be looking into that.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
And we are going to ask, we probably will ask a few questions about this, some of the things that have been brought up. If
Yeah.
that's all right. Now, does anybody else want to address this? Yes. Be sure and give your name and address.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Carver. I live at 370 Delaware Avenue Southeast, Bandon. I also work for the South Coast Regional Early Learning Hub. We're the early learning hub that serves Coos, Curry, and coastal Douglas counties. So we advocate for services that benefit the young children and families in our region. I did want to bring some data today to help understand like the issue here in Bandon. You're all aware, I'm sure, that we have a housing and homelessness crisis in this county, but it also is here in Bandon. So in 2019, there was a point in time count done to understand how many people who are homeless in the region or in Coos County. 21 children under the age of 6 were in Bandon in that year. Also, K-12 schools measure student homelessness. In the last school year, there was 26 kids that fell under the definition of homeless. So this is already happening. We already have people who are living in RVs, people who are doubled up, people who live, work, go to school in this community who are struggling to find a place to live. And even those folks who have a stable job, it is really hard to find a rental here. I think we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to support our low income populations in Bandon. They also deserve to live here, go to school, work here. I think that this resolution is a good idea. I agree that there wasn't really a clear definition on what temporary is. But I think that this is a good low cost way to support those who live here who are struggling to find housing. And it's a way for people who, they're property owners, they have a family member that they want to support. And, the other options to them are to leave this community. So if we want to support people to be able to continue to go to school, work here, and not have a big disruption, be forced to leave the community because they can't find housing, this is a great way to do that. I understand that there are some concerns about it being not clear on what temporary is. I think that should be more clear. But again, in order to solve the housing crisis, homelessness crisis, it's going to be a long-term problem. So my recommendation is to revisit this maybe annually or however often, so until there's more housing available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else want to address this? Okay. Now, can we ask a few questions? For example, about the CC&Rs in a subdivision? Does this override that?
No,
I did not think so. Okay. So they can't be anywhere where there's covenants in a subdivision.
that's correct. We can't override covenants,
didn't-
nor can we, but we don't enforce them either.
No.
So,
But if we got a call from somebody who is living in a area where there's covenants and it's very clear, I mean, you wouldn't even have to have anything wrong with the RV. If it's there, it's illegal.
but if,
That would be up to the CC&R board.
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah, the homeowners association would have to
I'm
enforce
hoping they
that.
have a homeowners association or somebody that's in charge of, okay. All right, and I think I don't know that we were aware that the planning commission hadn't seen this.
No, we weren't.
No, I didn't bring it to the planning commission because it wasn't in the title 16 or 17. So we can certainly bring it to them if you want.
I mean,
before-
this is I would say this is it's a resolution. I think the idea of a sunset sounds good, and we could do that with a few words, look at it again in the fall, say October, and see how it went. I think the thing that was lost here, or maybe even highlighted by some of the comments, is the enforcement issue. There are dozens of these here
already.
now. There are a number of them in my neighborhood. I personally don't like having the car on the street, but it's there. But I don't know that I would like that RV to be, on a street as well. So there's consequences to doing this. There's consequences to doing nothing. But I just want to highlight that not passing this would not solve the code enforcement issue. We would still have dozens that we would have to run through a long code enforcement process that might take 6 months. And at the end of the day, what we do is ask the municipal court to fine people. And in some cases, folks will take the fine or let the fine just sit on the books. So without passing this resolution, I wouldn't guarantee that the RVs that are here today would be moved soon.
I want to ask something. I didn't even think about this when we were talking about it in our work session. Can we restrict RVs from being in driveways?
Yes,
That's what I thought we could do. But if we pass this way it is with a sunset clause in it, then we would also have to stipulate the driveway thing, right?
Well, yes, only because storage of recreational vehicles is in a different chapter than the residing in a recreational vehicle. So we have a specific section 15.14.030 tells you all about driveway parking. So I think if we wanted to restrict it, we would have to amend it just to include that section as well.
I mean, I know it's going to eliminate a lot of RVs being able to be on property. I understand that. But then I also understand it's going to create a tremendous parking problem on some of the streets.
this is a matter of occupy. I think the question is, are we going to get substantially more folk doing this than we have now? Now, it's got to be a property owner that's willing to have someone do it. I think our view was it was going to be mostly, the situation now is it's mostly family members. So and I'm not advocating for this or against this. I'm just trying to clarify some of the thinking that went into it.
Jerry?
Were this to pass, are you going to have someone go around to those vehicles, the RVs that are already parked, and specify exactly what needs to be done?
We can. I mean, we have a
We
list
should.
from last year, so we did notify everyone at the time that we noticed an RV parked somewhere and plugged in on their property. So we could go around to that list and let them know about the new
And there'll
guidelines.
be somebody to enforce them, or go and check them up every once in a while? Or you're just gonna leave them for 6 months?
I'm not sure that we've talked about that. Generally, like our enforcement is until an issue arises,
complaint.
we don't check on them.
I think one of the things that this does, and I mean, the young woman there pointed out the dire need for housing. They're just, we can't, we've got 2 classes of people here, and one class, they are just desperate for housing. But I think when you look over in Coos Bay and North Bend, particularly North Bend, and you see them, they're all over the streets. There's no way, they have they're not on private property at all. And it would be much better if they were off the streets and they were on somebody's private property who was monitoring. And I mean, if you don't want somebody in your yard that's going to cause the kind of problems that we've talked about here. But if they're on the street, they're really, I mean, yes, you can enforce it. You can run them off the street and they'll drive, which is what they do in Coos Bay and North Bend. They drive from Coos Bay to North Bend and back again, or to a different residential street. So you have absolutely no control over them at all. And at least this gives you some control. But I think I agree. I think Mike had a very good point. And this needs to have a sunset clause.
Yes.
I think that's fair. And I initially wrote it to be very broad, to say at any time the council can revoke it, in an effort to that if 2 weeks in, it was a horrible idea, you could just say we rescind it. But I think Dan made a good point of maybe editing it to set a specific date in which we review it again.
The other thing we put in was the ability to add restrictions. In other words, there's something that we've missed here. I mean, they do have to be roadworthy, drivable, and licensed. Which does differentiate these from many of those that you see in Coos Bay
Yes,
and
exactly.
North Bend. You can't keep stuff outside. You can't be on a vacant lot. property owners can't charge rent, so it's not gonna be an income making people, but there's no way to promise that there won't be folks that create problems in neighborhoods. And if the problems are such that we could add restrictions to this, then the resolution just delegates that to the city manager to say, oh, yeah, we didn't think about that. So anyway, it's, all I really wanted to point out is there are dozens of them. There are dozens of them now.
Now, they all are going to be self-contained, so gentleman that brought up, or somebody brought up the taxing of the sewer system, that wouldn't tax, because it's the only dump place we have around here is Bullards, right?
As far as I know, yeah.
So it wouldn't tax our system at all.
And another point is, I think somebody talked about the school system.
Yeah.
And the school system is bleeding students. So this is not, I mean, they have lost so many students in the last couple of years that this is not going to be, it will be a positive impact to the schools if there are in fact children. Claudine.
Yeah.
Where does that material go?
I think they have their own
They have
sewer
their,
system.
they have their own sewer system.
And where does that sewer system enter?
You know what, Claudine? I don't know, because that would be under the state.
It probably runs through a drain field.
Yeah,
The one thing about this being a resolution is, and defining temporary is, if the problems that some folks think may happen because of this, in other words, if we attract a whole bunch more people because of this, if all of a sudden it's a bigger problem than it is today,
Right.
council will be well within its rights at the very next meeting, or to call a special meeting and say,
That's it.
we're appealing this resolution. We're back into enforcement mode. We tried it. It didn't work. It
Okay.
created additional problems for the neighborhood. That's the reason that you do this kind of non-enforcement thing rather than run it through and do an ordinance or anything else. This is just, I think you can say, we'll revisit it in October, no matter what. But if something happens in June, you guys can repeal this immediately.
well, we should,
Question.
okay, what you have to come up here because we can't hear. We're not going to open it up again. Yeah, but you can ask.
Okay,
one.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. Was stated that other jurisdictions have problems with rigs moving from one place to the other. Does that insinuate that Bandon isn't going to have any on-street parking if we adopt this resolution?
So far, I don't know that we have any illegal, them not parking on streets, do we?
No.
Does anything preclude it?
There are a couple. I mean, in other words, this resolution doesn't change anything about how it's allowed or not allowed
So we get both.
today.
We can potentially get both. That was the point that was trying to be brought to the fore, was that by getting this resolution, which has noble intentions, you now may have on-street parking, people utilizing, they come on my 22 acres constantly and park there. So I don't know what's going to preclude them from stopping on a street and having our police department or code enforcement try to kick them off. And then we're still going to have a new resolution that allows RVs on residential lots. So I'm just saying it's not one or the other necessarily. It may very well be both. And my statement wasn't about the sewer, it was about the water. Nowhere in what I read was the water addressed. It says you can plug in an electrical cord, but we're bleeding for water and we're bringing more on. There's better alternatives than letting people park RVs. We should get some land and bring some electrical to them is kind of where I was headed.
Do you
So
live in
like
the
a
city
homeless-
limits?
What?
You live in the city limits?
Absolutely.
22 acres. Wow. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Elsewhere probably.
So we could put,
Maybe not in the
a
city.
time
Said he is.
for this to sunset, or at least,
Yeah, would it go into the resolution
I don't
or?
have the language in here.
instead of the word temporary, which I can understand. is-
Sure, yeah. If you, I was just asking Dan if it should go into the resolution itself. Yeah, a date in which we review or that it sunsets.
In the last sentence, you would change the word on the third line, the fourth line, the council, it says currently the council may review this at any time. You could change it to say the council shall review this resolution in October 2023 to determine if it should remain in effect.
Shall review it or before?
Well, right, you can, You may review it at any time. We don't need to say that. You just have that power.
Oh.
This just says that you shall review it in October, so we
Okay.
can have another
Okay.
discussion with the
Shall review.
community. If folks haven't come forward, this will give them a chance to come forward and say, oh, by the way, this didn't work in my neighborhood. This
Right.
caused this problem or that problem. So
Yeah, because may is, shall means we will do it.
we'll do it in October.
Why don't we just say will instead of shall? That's more definite. All right, will. So all right, so we would add that
What are we
in.
Changing. What paragraph?
Last paragraph, fourth line, beginning guidelines in exhibit A. If that sentence that starts with the council,
Shall.
Oh,
the council shall review this resolution. Cross out the words at any time. And add in October 2023. To determine if it should remain in effect.
Okay,
Yeah, I got a question.
yes.
Now, the part two under RVs parked in residential RV. Must park in compliance with chapter 15.414. Now, does that say they can park on the street or does it have to be parked off the street?
It would have to be parked on private property. So that chapter is about how you can park it on your own property if it's located in the driveway or your side yard or your rear yard. It
Okay.
tells you what your
But
setbacks
they
are.
can't be on the street.
No,
That's
Oh,
correct.
that-
Yeah.
That's, okay.
Any other questions?
So we're gonna let them park in driveways.
Well, I think if you're
I-
giving us the feedback,
well, we need a motion and,
To,
well, I'm assuming that's where we are at this point. So,
Okay.
so we're letting them park in driveways. I mean, currently unoccupied RVs in driveways?
well, she's saying
do
it's
have-
part of the resolution because
Correct.
right now it says you have to park by the standards of 15.14, which says you can park them in driveways.
Right.
So I think she's asking if, and I think that's up to you guys.
That's already, so that's already in the code. This only affects if it's occupied or
right.
this comes into
We
play
can
if it's
change it at any
occupied.
time too, so.
Well, we did to change the ordinance would require an ordinance. We can change this resolution at any time.
Yeah.
Or the
Okay,
guideline.
before we vote or get a motion,
Yeah.
Dennis, you have a question?
Yeah. Dennis Thomason, 1157 8th Street Northeast. I have a question. Have we considered what this will do to like housing values? Like if I get a neighbor that has one in their yard and somebody comes to look at my house that's for sale, is that gonna, the price of my house gonna be worth less? So thanks.
Well,
I guess my comment to that would be probably they're gonna have, a lot of people have RVs. And the only way sometimes whether you can tell whether they're rented or not, or whether somebody's living in it, I don't like the word rented, is if there's an electric cord going to it. It's,
got electric cord to mine and nobody's living in it.
well, that's what I mean. But if somebody drives by and sees the electric cord, they're gonna say, oh, somebody's living there, but you're doing it to keep it warm. So,
no.
yeah.
or whatever,
Charged.
Right.
whatever. Okay,
Good point.
What extra sewage?
When the RVs go to dump. But they charge for it. I mean, they do it for everybody in the summer.
yeah, they do it.
Yeah,
They do it summer all the time.
Coast and they'll stop and dump wherever they
There's
can.
no fee to dump. It's
Oh, there isn't?
It's suggested that you make a donation if
Oh.
you're not camping there,
Oh, okay,
but there's no actual fee.
So it doesn't even cost people. Okay,
okay.
all right.
All right.
I do want to tell you people that there was a lot of angst about this on the council,
Yes.
but there's also a lot of angst about people. And I hear them from people every day who can't afford the $1,400 to $1,600 a month rent, even if a house was available. And oftentimes they aren't. So sometimes you bite the bullet and do what you think is the right thing to do. And that's why we came up with this.
And please, if you have a problem in the future, contact us. Tell us what your problems are.
Yeah, and
We can
come-
Revisit this
Exactly.
anytime.
And come to the council. I didn't know there was a loose pit bull. And
Yeah, I didn't either.
I'd really like to know about those things. And
Yeah,
if you're not getting, if we're overburdened, come to the council and no, we're not supposed to let anybody talk more than once.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's always an alternative. We need to know these things because particularly loose, mean dogs in the neighborhood are something that we take very seriously.
And we're very easy to find. We're on the website. Both our emails and our phone numbers are on the
Come and
website.
visit us. Yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
come up here. Before we make a motion, we'll allow somebody that hasn't
She hasn't
spoken to ask a
spoken yet,
question.
I'm Catherine Driscoll, 3780 Beach Slope. And all I keep hearing is that you say, we want to know what's going on, but I feel like I didn't know what's going on. I had a neighbor call me and tell me that this was going to be happening, and I'm sure there's a lot of other residents here in Bandon that know absolutely nothing about this. And
We
I feel
understand
like it comes down to money. I think I printed out the whole sheet of your agenda and, your guidelines. And it basically says family members. But I heard you talking that you want to have people for workers. I know there's no housing for them, but those two are different topics. Is it going to be family members or is it going to be people coming to work in Bandon and they need housing? And then are you going to really let them live for free in the RV?
Well, that's up to the property owner. I mean, the property.
Well, why would you have an RV in your property if you're not going to get anything out of it? I mean, I have 2 children living with me right now, adult children, and we're about ready to kill each other sometimes. You really want to have some people living in your driveway? That's not gonna, it'll be people hiding the money. You'll say that you can't charge rent, but how are you gonna enforce that? I heard over here that there were 50 RVs that you don't know who lives in them or not, and that you're only gonna enforce the laws that you want to. Why do we have them on the books if you're not gonna enforce it? I want to know who's in my community. I want to know if someone's living in an RV and I want to know if they're there full-time or not. And you guys are hired to enforce the laws that are on the books,
Ma'am, you need to address the council.
right?
Thank you. And yeah, and you need to address the council and we don't.
Well, that's it. So it sounds like you guys have already decided that you're voting for it and all of us are here saying, no, we don't want it. So are you going to listen to us?
Well, I heard some very reasonable people and they were talking about putting a sunset or a.
I heard
type
Mike.
review.
This Mike, it's the only one said,
And then I
said
heard
two.
from the young woman back there who spoke on the behalf of the problem. So, it's just,
But the majority of us here, you want to raise your hand if you're.
all right,
for
come
it?
on. We're not-
Can we do that?
We appreciate it. Thank you. We're not going to.
The city or the county?
I don't know. She didn't give. her name and
Catherine, are you
address.
in the city or the county area? Miss Driscoll,
Catherine's in the city.
is it, you in the
Yeah.
city area? Thank you.
Okay, all right, we're not going to argue back and forth.
That's
Okay,
it.
we've,
Accepted the comment from someone in favor of this who is not a resident of Bandon
well,
and representing people who may not.
She lives here, Claudine. Claudine, she lives here.
Set my address.
all right, you guys,
All right,
let's not have a,
close the question and answer period.
okay.
All right. Make a motion to approve resolution 2307 with corrections or with, how do you want me to state that?
Amended.
With the changes as
As
presented
amended.
today.
Okay. Allowing recreational vehicles as temporary housing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 23-07 with the changes which will allow recreational vehicles as temporary housing.
And
All
I
those in
definitely,
favor?
Jeff,
Jeff?
Aye.
Right, thank you. Let the record show the motion has been approved by
and I
unanimous. vote.
definitely want to revisit that one soon.
I will bring you information too as it comes in, just keep you in the loop on
Could
what
you
we
keep
learned.
us abreast of the
Yeah.
ones that you're checking into right now that are existing?
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
And I think the word temporary, where it says temporary housing, it's clear that we're hoping these people can find a place to live. That's really the goal.
Yes.
Okay, the next on the agenda is revising the facade improvement loan grant program. Dan or Dana?
Yes, so
Thank you.
after.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, I'll wait for everyone to clear out. This one's less exciting, but so at our last meeting, we talked about passing a resolution to revise the facade improvement loan grant program. We had initially asked to go from 50% to 70% of that forgivable portion of the loan. I think Madeline asked the question last time about urban renewal or how much money we have set aside for these things. So in looking back, there are two districts. There's District 1, which is the Old Town area, and it's funded by urban renewal. Which is has more money coming into it each year. And then District 2 is any other commercial property that's located in the C2 general commercial or LI areas along Highway 101 and Fillmore and 11th Street Southeast. And that was funded through community development block grant. So it's much more finite sort of resource. And my understanding is that was started as just a trial program. And I don't think in my time here, we've gotten any requests for facade improvement loan grants in District 2, though it's possible and probable that it happened before me. So I brought you the resolution here today, but I also would encourage you to talk through or discuss whether or not you want this program to apply to both districts or just Urban Renewal 1, or if you want to set a cap as far as how many we might do in a year or how much we might budget for it.
Well, I do know, Dana, that we do have one that's been completed on Baltimore and.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there you go. That is
So,
one.
yeah, that is one.
Yes.
Which one is that?
Mail and ship.
Mhm.
Did a
Oh,
facade.
yeah.
I think we should have both districts.
I do too.
I
Okay.
mean, why limit it just to Old Town when 101 gets plenty of traffic and plenty of visuals?
I agree.
So I think we should have it all areas that are qualified. Anybody else?
That's the way I wrote the resolution.
Yeah.
So I'm
Right.
glad you agree, but I wanted
Right.
to bring it to you just knowing that
No, I,
there wasn't a sort of renewable resource there.
Right.
So it may need to, if the community development block grant runs out, then we'd have to find somewhere else where that money comes from, general fund.
How many businesses are in that little area?
Well, it's every bit, you're talking about District 2.
Yeah.
It would be every business that's along Highway 101, Fillmore, or 11th Street Southeast.
Well, that's quite a few.
Yeah, for sure. So.
If they take advantage of it, though.
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
but
There have been, since I've been here, there haven't been any.
I don't think it's
Just the
gonna
one.
cause a rush on.
No, there
No.
won't be. I mean, some of those are well maintained.
Well, as part of, if you pass this resolution, I do know that the Greater Bandon Association is interested in doing a bunch of outreach to businesses to let them know that this opportunity is available. Not that, again, I think we'd get a rush on it because it ultimately still requires someone to.
Sure, they have to put up their own money too. Yeah.
So,
I make a motion to approve resolution 2308, revising the facade improvement loan grant program.
Second.
Been moved by Josh, seconded by Chris, that we approve resolution 2308, revising the facade improvement loan grant program. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, let the record show it passed unanimously.
great, thank you.
The next item is to accept the city's audited financial report for fiscal year 21-22 and approve a plan of action.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councilors. We got our audit in February of 2023. They noted one significant deficiency, what they determined as a significant deficiency. And it has to deal with how we account for expenditures and revenue at the year-end transition. They believe that we were not doing it correctly. This is something that no auditor has
I
ever,
was just going to ask that question.
no auditor has ever said this in the period of our whole. But I think that when you hire a new auditing firm, they're gonna find something that they disagree with the former firm about. Nonetheless, they call it out as a significant deficiency, which means that we have to have a discussion or a resolution at the city council that addresses how we're going to deal with it. We went ahead and did it last year, which meant we had to restate some things from last year. And you know, it's things like, you know, you have landscape work done and the bill comes in July or August. So previously, the city would just sort of let that revolve around the year, knowing that from year to year to year, it would pan out the same. But now they want this hard line, and in this case, they've made us go back and recharacterize things as being in the previous year. In any event, not a problem for us. We've handled it. We're ready to go forward. We do have to do this resolution to satisfy the audit division of Department of Revenue.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I make a motion to accept the City of Bandon's audited financial report for fiscal year 2021 to 22 as prepared by KDP and approve resolution 2309 adopting the plan of action.
Second, been moved by Madeline, seconded by Jerry, that we accept the city's audited financial report prepared by KDP and approve resolution number 23-09, adopting the plan of action. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Jeff. So unanimous. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the library distribution formula.
I'm going to invite Christine Kingsbury, our library director, up to the table.
Okay,
Thank you so much for having me. Today, we just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what's happening with the allocation formula for the library and the Cruz County Library Board, and what the process is right now. So they've known for many years that the library allocation formula is not right. It's basically unfair, and it has been really outdated. I think the formula was first made in the early 1990s, and they've kind of known for a while that we need to readjust this formula to make it more equitable. And they're in the process of doing that. The past couple of years, they've taken steps to look at library statistics to come up with a new formula that makes sense for everyone. Right now, the Cruz County Library Board has set up a committee to go over the formula. And it's made up of the North Bend Library Director, who is doing all the formula processing, and then certain members of the board. So they're just looking at what criteria should we really be using in order to come up with a new formula. There was a recent library director meeting where they invited our comments and our input on what we think that criteria should be. So the Cruz County Library Board is asking the directors to really have input into what we should do from here. And after they analyze what our input is, they're going to try and come up with what they think that criteria should be for the new formula. That's where we're kind of at this time. There are 8 libraries in our system that are all under the Coos County Library Board as an advisory board. And that's Coos Bay, North Bend, Bandon, Coquille, Myrtle Point, Lakeside, Dora, and Powers are all part of this library district. Let's see. So a possible new formula takes into consideration population served, so how many people each library serves, and then the usage. So library statistics and circulation and visits and computer use. And Bandon actually has very high usage statistics within our county. So they're looking at, how do we create a formula that has the population served and then usage in there. And then there's also been a proposition to include a baseline, which would be a base for the small libraries, Dora and Powers, to have a set number to help them keep an operation. And then the larger libraries, Coos Bay and North Bend, have requested or proposed a possible baseline for their libraries as their larger libraries in the county, and their directors do some extra tasks for the district as a whole. So they help with, if we had a grant that might be applicable for everyone, they might help with that. This is mostly their time that they spend on helping with some of those functions. So these are just ideas at this point. We don't really know where they're going, what's going to happen at this point, but they're looking at that. Let's see. So some of the concerns for Bandon, there's really only 2 libraries that will really benefit from a new formula based on population and usage, and that's Bandon Library and Lakeside, that would actually benefit from the formula. And at a recent meeting, it was expressed by, this is at the Coos County Library Board meeting, it was expressed that they would like to see the new formula stay as close as possible to the current formula, and that there's not a big swing in funding either way. So that was a little bit of my concern, as I want to make sure that whatever we do going forward is based on a fair formula with real statistics and real numbers, whatever that is for us, and not based on trying to keep a formula as close as possible to the current formula. So that is kind of the vibe that I have gotten recently, and how they want to move forward, but it's all up in the air right now.
So the chart that we have is the proposed new formula?
It is an example that the Coos County Library, I'm sorry, the North Bend Library Director put together
Oh.
just to kind of show us, okay, if we do this, this is what it might look like. And it was kind of the first time that we've actually seen numbers.
Yep.
Everyone knew we needed to do this, but no one really, this is kind of putting it on paper now. So let's see.
I don't know about you, but I had to get my magnifying glass.
Well,
It's extremely, it's complicated and it's difficult to. see.
Tiny.
It's very tiny.
So the question I have is, so they are getting an extra, say Coos Bay is getting an extra 231,000 because for a base and we don't have a base?
So right
Certainly
now,
doesn't seem fair.
yeah, so this is all like a hypothetical, like if they went with this direction, like the formula that you guys have, actually, I'll go to that page. Right now, there is not a base. There's just this formula out there that we're using that was, we really don't know exactly how that they came up with the numbers for that.
It's probably
Maybe
100 years old.
Exactly. So now they're looking at what if we did a new formula that was population, usage, and then if we did a base, this is what it could look like.
Sure.
So,
I could understand a base for Powers and Dora.
Right.
Because they need something
They need
to
help.
budget from, but I can't understand these kind of bases for North Bend and Coos Bay, 231,000, yeah, both of them.
right.
And no base for Bandon. It should be the larger libraries from above Powers should be on just usage and population. And yes, they're going to get more money, but they won't have a guaranteed base on top of the usage formula.
Right.
So
But
if,
this is just an example, Mary.
No, but that's what they want, right?
but under any of these, which is interesting, is you think about, these are just ways that you might introduce more fairness to the system. Not even that these would make it completely fair. There are other things, North Bend and Coos Bay have got to have security guards that, fortunately, we don't have to have. Those are other factors that come in. But if you look at the chart here with the various formulas that actually include real data, Bandon would receive 54,000 to 98,000 more dollars a year.
Yeah.
And the argument that because you've been underfunded for years and they've been overfunded for years, well, gosh, let's just not change things too much because the people that are used to getting the extra money doesn't make any sense. The thing for the council that I would say, and I can be less politic about it than Christine, is the county commission is the governing body for the library district. I don't believe that they know that they are.
Well, they know they are. I talked to two
Well-
of them personally, and they are not interested in getting into a hassle with the Coos County Library Board. I can assure you, I begged John and he said, we leave this to up. But now, doesn't Bandon have somebody on the library board? Coos County Library Board?
We have a person that represents, she does live in Bandon and she represents small cities in Dora. So
But didn't she used to be on the Bandon Library Board?
she used to be on.
So
Bandon.
she does understand the
Yes.
Bandon, okay. So maybe she's the one we should be talking to, because I can assure you that Bob and John, I believe Melissa Cribbins was the one who.
She was the
She was
liaison.
the lead on it from the commission, and now she's gone. And so unless we contact Rob Taylor and see if, or Rod Taylor, and see if he's willing to, to carry it for us. I can assure you that Bob and John, they have a $3 million deficit in their budget, and they have got a lot of things to worry about, and they're not going to get into it with the library board. So
Right.
that's the cold, hard truth.
We did try to get our library director onto the allocation subcommittee and they declined.
Yeah. Yeah. See, it's too
So
bad.
there's no one on the allocation.
God.
So there's no one on the allocation committee. No one on the allocation committee is from a library that would benefit from a change in the
Of course not.
allocation
Of
committee.
course not.
So
Why
I know.
would we do that?
And I did, I explained to John, I explained all that to him, but he said, we just don't want to get involved. So they
there
aren't.
is a county commissioner from Bandon.
I know,
wanna
and so
get
maybe
involved.
we better contact him. Maybe this would be a
Contact
nice
Rod.
issue for him to take on.
Yeah.
Amen.
Definitely.
And what's Coastline?
It's our library network, so it consists of Coos County and Curry County. So we share resources with those, between all the libraries in those two counties as far as books and things like that.
And is it funded through the levy?
I am not sure. I don't know on that.
Okay, because I'd ask questions, but I don't want to in public here. Anyway, they funded something that one of the commissioners was very upset about. And he wanted to know if Coastline was, if the county's money or the money went to fund Coastline. So, but he saw that they were a sponsor of something that he didn't care for. So I said I would ask because he didn't know what Coastline was. I mean, they don't, the commissioners really, this is not something that they have dealt with. I believe Melissa's dealt with it and the library board, but not the two remaining commissioners. So.
Right, right.
And you're right, but out of any of these formulas, we will be receiving more money, right? We may not still be whole. Some formulas, we won't be receiving any more money.
Because they are just, Christine, correct me, those are just ideas from the North Bend director. So the push now to have no change more than 10% would mean that we might not even do as well as any of these would have us do.
Great.
So.
Right.
I don't know. I see what you're saying, what you're suggesting here.
Got a counselor involved.
But if we can't get anybody on the board, how are we going to become involved and help advocate?
Mhm. I am going to be attending that meeting, their subcommittee meetings, just as a public meeting, that just to be sure that our voice and Bandon is being advocated for, at those meetings the best that I can at this point. So I did ask that the board reconsider my request to join, as I felt it would be more fair if another library director, a second library director from the county had some voice in this. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
How many libraries are there? There are 8, you said?
There's 8 libraries.
How many people are on the board?
On the subcommittee,
The allocation.
the allocation committee, they have the North Bend Library Director, 2 Coos County board members, and a 3rd spot open for another board member.
So 4.
Right.
They should take the 4 largest volume libraries and make those all the positions. So Rod, the Coos County is responsible for this, right? The commissioners?
They're responsible.
We should
for-
drag them in here and tell them they gotta get this stuff fixed up. This is ridiculous.
So right now, it's really just at what criteria we're going to use. And I just want you to know that as far as Bandon goes, I've been very clear that we want a fair formula based on real numbers. And we're not going to be happy with anything less than that. And that's as far as we are.
Library directors that feel the same way as you do?
The only other library that would really benefit from this would be Lakeside. And I haven't had a chance to really get together with that library director. We do have a meeting next week to kind of get her.
And they must be pretty small.
They are.
They're probably smaller than we are.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Definitely.
way smaller.
Right.
So we're kind of like the in-between. We've got Lakeside Powers and Dora, and then we've got Bandon, and then we got North Bend and Coos Bay.
Right.
So we're kind of like in the middle.
What about Coquille? How do they?
Oh, yeah,
They get more
Coquille
than
and
we
Myrtle
do.
Point.
Yeah, actually, their allocation formula, current formula, it's actually in your packet. They actually get more than we
They
do.
get more than we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw
Though
that.
their population served is less and their usage is less.
So is there a recourse? Is there somebody that you can appeal to, like the Board of Commissioners? I wonder that, I'll bet you that there's some kind of an appeal process set up there. And it might be that they would have to hear this.
We're gonna go up and try to find the, I did a public records request for the
Beginning of it.
original ballot measure from
Right.
1992. I'm gonna go pick it up today when
Thank
this
you.
meeting's.
Good
over.
idea,
We'll see
because
what
I
it says.
think,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah.
There may be, and then they would have to get involved. Sorry, my friends, but
Okay, so we can revisit this then, because you're gonna pick up the original.
Yes, this is just a discussion item. We wanted to
Okay.
bring you
Okay.
up to speed. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much.
Christine.
She's doing a great job advocating for us.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be here.
Very good reports.
Thank you so much.
okay, the next item on the agenda is select recruitment services for city abandoned city. And
We did an RFP. You can see the results on the cover sheet.
yeah,
Um. I don't know how much time you guys have had to go through them.
well,
I want to know why an RFP was sent out without
we
asking
didn't,
the council.
Well, the council doesn't need, you don't need to do anything with this. You could hire, it's just an option.
ourselves.
But we want, because it took so much time to get it done, we wanted to go and at least give you the options of using
Okay,
a firm to do it.
Last time we did that.
because
No,
see, we have.
I highly recommend that you use a firm.
Well, see, we've used a firm two times and
Yep.
we brought two of the most incompetent people that I have ever seen in my life.
Was one of the firms listed here?
Yes.
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 Yes. And where it says 17.5, plus expenses,
Yeah,
it ended up being more like 30,000 for each of these people.
right.
And we have been burned, and I want to tell you that I personally have been through, I believe, 6 hirings.
Mhm.
And the best hiring besides Dan, which it kind of came through a headhunter, but not really, because we just talked to him on our own and hired him, and we've been happy. But the hospital district, we had after we made the decision to fire the former hospital director, the first night that I was on the hospital board, there were that left 2 of them, 2 people walked out and resigned, 2 of the long-term board members. So there were 3 of us left, and we started the search. And we advertised. What we would do here is we'd advertise through the International City Managers Association and through the League of Oregon Cities. We would have the resumes come to either June or Andrea and then once we get in the resumes by the due date, each of the counselors would get the packet of resumes. We would spend a lot of time going through them individually. We would each pick maybe 4 of the top people that we want to interview. And then we would sit down as a council and we would narrow that down to maybe 5 or 6 people. We would do the interview through, and I have a whole complete list of questions that we could ask. We
We'll
would
do it Zoom.
do the interview through Zoom, which saves you money. And then once maybe we would narrow it down to 2 people, and then we would ask the leadership team from the city, which would be the city, the police chief, the public works, they could come in and ask some questions. And then when you finally narrow it down to 1, maybe 2, you could bring them here. I don't believe we did at the hospital. We did everything over Zoom. And we got a dynamite. I mean, it's probably the best one they've had in many, many years. Of course, I'm prejudiced because I was part of that, but we got a really good, and we've had a good city manager here. Okay, but we didn't get them through the 2 that we got.
Nope.
I mean, it put us back years. And so I'm not willing to go with a headhunter. I'm
When
just
Dan
not.
came in, the mess that had to be cleaned up at City Hall with the state and everybody else.
Yeah. So you can
I don't
see
wanna go
where
through
we
that
have a
again.
lot of history here, and the 4 of us, we have a lot of history. And we can share our history with you, Josh, because
Yes.
it hasn't been good. And I believe that I know how to do it with the help of our city employees. I believe we can do it. And
I think so too.
I mean, we can look these over, but I'm not interested. And if anybody else is interested. it's
Maybe
just-
we should just not let Dan leave.
Well, that.
Well,
we-
That's an option, right?
Yeah, that didn't seem to be on this page here. but in case he changes his mind. Anyway, I don't think we're gonna make a motion on that today.
No.
I want to hear the planning work program housing updates.
So we are wrapping up our work program, and as a reminder, we talked to you in a work session 2 years ago, and it took us a little bit longer than we thought to get through our work session. Or our work program rather. So this is the sort of final thing. We sort of promised that we would do some housing stuff. We had thought that our housing needs analysis would be a faster process, but it's not done yet. So we'll still have more housing updates to do once that process is complete. But there are a couple of things I think we can get done before the end of the year. I've listed them here, and just to note, we do have a work session scheduled with the Planning Commission in May where we'll talk about next year's work program. So if there's things that we can fit in here that we're sort of calling low-hanging fruit, let me know today. If there's bigger things that we want to take on, that can get put in a parking lot, and then we'll talk about it at that work session. So here are some of the ideas that we've come up with, specifically around accessory dwelling units. We've talked about allowing a larger accessory dwelling unit. So right now we allow 650 square feet or 40% of the primary dwelling square footage, whichever is smaller. We've talked about maybe going up to 800 or changing that 40% to a different number. We could also consider allowing more than one ADU on a lot. Or allow ADUs with duplexes, and then also consider some universal setbacks for ADUs of a certain size. So if you have a pretty small one, you could maybe make it closer to property lines, something to discuss and consider. We did get visited by a guy the other day, a planning commissioner over in Talent, who has an ADU advocacy website. It was very sweet. They've just updated their code, and it's thataduguy.com. He said he's compiled lots of research from other cities across Oregon, what they're doing. So if you want to check it out, we haven't looked into it yet, but he did have a lot of ideas for us. So we'll be looking at that to see what other cities are doing. One of the things that's come up is the way that our multifamily dwelling definition is written. It has to be attached. And so there's some situations where people don't want to have attached multifamily dwellings. They want to have maybe 3 dwellings on a lot. So that's something we could consider, is changing that definition. I think that's kind of an easy sell for getting more housing. That's something I've been getting asked a lot. We also talked about a sort of calling it a legacy zoning overlay to allow neighborhoods such as Bandon Heights to utilize their existing sort of built out style and density. Bandon Heights, it has much smaller lots. So right now we require 5,400 square feet, and some of those lots are like 25 by 100. And a lot of them don't have the required setbacks of 20 on the front, 10 in the rear, and then 13 on the side. So sort of just accepting that that neighborhood is different, and allowing it to continue to build out the way that it has. Which would also help with the other thing that we get is the minimum lot size. So what else can you build on those small lots? Or some people want to have to, or feel like they have to combine lots at that point. So anyway, just a way to maybe allow more infill housing. Mary, this one's for you. Allow up to 4 residential units on light industrial land over 10 acres. So that just allows, because you can have a light industrial property that's much smaller, has the same allowance for residential units as larger. So we'll throw that one in. And then consider adjusting minimum lot sizes for different housing types. And that is, so there are certain neighborhoods like in the R2, it's always really frustrating, I'm sure, for people when they come in and they say, I have an 8,500 square foot lot and I want to build a duplex, and the minimum allowed is 9,000 square feet.
Yeah, see.
So I think we can play with those and adjust them to make them more realistic for what's actually out there, what lot sizes we're seeing. And I don't think that the 500 square feet missing is super offensive. So we'll look at different examples throughout town to make sure that that works. But we felt like these were pretty low hanging fruit, that we could get through them in just a work session and maybe a hearing or 2, and have it done before July.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why can't you allow 4 residential units on 5 acres? It says
sure,
industrial land over 10 acres. There's not a whole lot of that in town.
That's correct.
So you don't want them, obviously. Is that what you're saying?
Residential units on light industrial property. Yeah, I think that light industrial property is meant to remain for industrial uses. We do have a couple that we'll be talking about soon that are interested in citing themselves in Bandon. I think also our requirements for industrial land, our data is really outdated. So before we make big amendments to the light industrial zone, I think we have to do a little bit more research to figure out if we do have available land for those uses. And Dan might have other thoughts on that. Am I leaving anything out?
No, the size was intentional. I mean, I think it's. Bandon doesn't have a lot of light industrial land, and with the number of wetlands that we have, I think it's important. Some people think it's important that we preserve that ability to have those family wage jobs in town on light industrial land. The story I always tell is in the 90s, there was a big issue around housing. And it was, well, gosh, we've got all this farmland protection, but look at these hillsides. Not gonna be any farms on these hillsides. Why don't you let the hillsides be available for housing? It'd be great housing. They got great views of the farmland. The farm advocates, who aren't my favorite people, generally said no. And if you think about now, Oregon is the next Napa, right? So all those hillsides are now wineries. So I think we can be short-sighted if we don't. If we think things are not gonna change, our industry might come back. So if we're gonna do that, we should do. And if appealed, we would have to do some analysis of what we actually have available in terms of job producing land. That's all.
That's what I was gonna ask. Sometime in the future, when this comes back to us or in a work session, if we could have a map showing light industrial that
Yeah.
has 10 acres and light industrial that has less than 10 acres. So we can see what we're looking at.
Yes, we can do that for you. We don't have much light industrial or industrial land inside the city limits right
I
now.
wouldn't think so.
Right.
Yeah, I think what helps us is in our urban growth boundary, the airport is industrial. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
did we miss anything? I guess that's my only other question. Are there other housing issues that you're hearing of that we should know about and try to fix?
Well, I just
Yeah.
think that we need to make every effort to, particularly on the fringe areas of town where housing is being considered. I think we need to make every effort. I mean, so far we've talked and I don't really see anything happening. At least what we did earlier today is a concrete to do something. And it may not, I'm sure that woman's over there is going to.
Oh, she
She
doesn't
would-
like us right now.
I don't know who she is, but she's very upset and she's storming out the door. But we've got to look at the whole community. And I mean, you can take people like Chris and ask him how hard it is to find an employee. There isn't anywhere for these people to live. I mean, I have a rental and a renter, and I'm embarrassed by what I charge. I really am, but that's the going rate. And you're crazy, I've lost money over the years. So you say, oh, well, mask your guilt and keep on charging it and hope that someday you make it back up. But there's just a crying need for housing. And I think what we did today was the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's to say that we'll look it over and reevaluate it. That's the fair way to do. And hopefully, and if we do see some egregious ones, Richard, let's jump on them pretty quick, because that way they'll be taken care of. And so people won't come back and say, well, there's a big problem, because we really want this to work. Thank you.
When you're doing setback adjustments on footage and stuff, do you consult Lanny?
Let's see, I don't know that we've made changes to
Right.
setbacks other than for steps, which I don't think affect him, but I can certainly bring him into the conversation. I
just
usually
asked-
talk with Dim, who talks with Lanny if there's any issues.
Oh, well, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking that because I come from Huntington Beach, California,
Mhm.
and they divided lots and the fire department, they didn't listen to them. And we have 3-foot setbacks. They can't even get a hose and a ladder to fight a fire.
Mm,
So that's why I ask about setbacks all the time.
It's a good question. I will make a note of it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
to the
now,
next.
Just a ballpark figure. How many ADUs do we have right now?
Well, it's hard to know exactly. I can tell you that last year, I think we approved 8 new accessory dwelling units. I would say there's probably quite a few illegal ADU,
Yeah.
ADUs out there that are
Yeah.
from before, and I think previous years we probably did just a couple, maybe 2 or 3. So newly approved, I would say less than 20. But however, there may be some that are pre, our land use program and some that, and I know of illegal ones out there, so
Yeah.
hard to know. But we are getting quite a bit of interest on the ADU SDC grant, so
Yeah, that's
hopefully
good.
getting our first application in soon, and we'll keep you
Great.
posted on that one.
Good.
We've also got the county looking at we've got the county looking at 2 different sets of pre-approved plans. So hopefully we'll
That'll help.
keep
That
put
would-
pressure on,
That would be.
yeah, keep put pressure on them. We are finding that, construction costs are really just
Mhm.
slowing down housing. We've had a couple of projects. The 48 unit apartment project is shelved. Another project that we've talked about is probably shelved.
Mhm.
The good news is this project with the school district's going extraordinarily well.
Good.
We've got, we're getting what's called the Alta survey done. It's a very detailed look at what's on the property in terms of easements. We pulled title reports. We're having geotechnical work done to see if you can do multi-story there. And we've got 2 consultants, a team of two guys that have probably between them done $30,000 to $40,000 of 30 to 40,000 units of housing, mostly workforce and affordable housing in the state of Oregon. They were the guys that were hired by the state to help with the replacement housing from the fire.
Hmm.
And they're going to be advising us, and we'll come back in a month and be able to go out with a request for proposals that we can bring to the table.
That'd be great.
And it's going to make it will make a big difference. And the biggest difference, what people tell me, like Rob Crocker, who's done all the development of Reedsport that you
Yes.
saw,
Yes.
he's very complimentary. He says, because the reason is that the city's showing some leadership rather than being in the way. We're actually trying to get barriers out of the way and
Right.
make it happen. He says that's what it's going to take. But all the economic news around housing, I sit on the housing steering committee for the region, and the economic news is just bad in terms of costs.
And planning commission's having a meeting on it Thursday, aren't they?
That's correct. Yeah, the rezone is on their agenda for a hearing.
What about the project with Kaiser on 18th or 19th or,
17 or 19 acres.
yeah,
We actually got good news. We retained a local, Meg Scalisi, to take another look at the wetlands issue. He believes there's probably half as much as the other consultants found.
Good.
And they're going to be meeting with the Division of State Lands soon to see if they concur. And then we'll move forward. We'll move forward with that. And kind of the idea, right? The overall idea is that we can do workforce rental housing on what we call this central site, which is with the school district and this polygon piece that the city has. And then do some affordable home ownership opportunities on this other site through a housing trust or land trust, so that people can get into the shared equity model, get families into Bandon,
Yeah.
right.
get kids into Bandon, let people start to build their equity, build this American dream. And then they move on, and it works really, really well. People get their equity and get to move on. The housing trust retains equity so they can use that to incentivize the next family to move in. So it's just frustrating to have to wait for all of the wetlands
Yeah,
stuff and permitting, because people are coming to us all the time with ideas and projects and prefab houses and all kinds of things happening. And we just have to say, well, first things first, we got to know how much land we have.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
it's all good news.
All right, now do we go through council, mayor, staff remarks, or do we just go into the urban renewal?
I don't think we need to do remarks, do we? Does anybody have anything to say?
I just said what I was gonna say.
Oh, I got it. Fillmore Pump Station, we have an update on that.
Yeah, they're about to have I think was a month or so away from having the design done. They've done all the archaeological work. They're just in that design phase right now. The cool thing about the archaeological work is it will also serve when we replace the bridge there at Ferry Creek. So we're doing both of those things together. It's a very sensitive area to the tribe, so.
Oh, I have an update real fast. Remember the fire hydrant I mentioned on Riverside Drive? I love our public works. Timmy is so great. He called me right away, said, look at Mellon. That's a swamp, as we all know. And they're waiting for the tide table to lower for the summer and then they'll fix our fire hydrant. But he did guarantee me that we do have plenty of water tenders in case something happens on that part of town, that we wouldn't need the hydrant.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I'm really sad to see. And it's been happening for a long time. I've been over here over 40 years. But we're becoming a city of haves and have-nots.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I hate to see us devolve into a situation where, well, I don't want this guy living next to me and it's like, what are these people? I felt like saying something, but the service sector in this community is really hurting.
Yes.
Chris can tell you, anybody can tell you that nobody wants to work. They can't afford to live here, so they can't afford to work here. But I'm proud of you guys for sticking up for these people, and thank you, young lady, for pointing out that we do have homeless kids in
we
this
do.
community, for crying out
Yes, we
loud.
do.
And people need to be aware of that, and they need to be a little more sympathetic to the situation, and having somebody get up and say, well, don't you guys join me? These guys, all they want to do, come on, man. I mean, as our president would say, come on, man. It's just not right. That's all I gotta say.
There is a lot of homeless. The VFW auxiliary makes sure through the police department every year at Christmas that the homeless, that they know where they are and nobody else does. They do get something from the VFW auxiliary. We usually give them a $25 gift card and some food. So I do know they're out there.
Jerry, do you have anything?
No.
Because we're gonna go on now to the,
Does Jeff have anything?
oh, Jeff, did you have
No.
anything you wanted to say?
No, I think everything was pretty well touched on.
Okay, thanks, because now we're gonna go to the
Okay. Urban renewal.
urban renewal. Okay, first we need the approval of joint city council.
So
and renewal
moved.
minutes. All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Chris, are you in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the next one may have a few questions.
You bet.
Award contract for city abandoned urban renewal downtown streetscape and parking plan. All right, could I hear from somebody about that?
Pardon me. So having looked at what's been happening in a number of other jurisdictions around the state, and looking at talking with the chamber and other folks about issues in Old Town, and looking particularly at what the city of Coquille recently did with its streetscape, we thought, well, let's see how much it would cost. Let's get an RFP out to see if we can get some folks to come in and help us just take a look at Old Town, look at circulation, look at potentially colors, street furniture, benches, the layout of the sidewalks, and just see what might come up. We did a request for proposals. We got a great proposal in. I actually had seen some of the work that had resulted from these folks' plans before. Was really, really impressed. And I saw the work and was impressed by it before I knew who had done it, but I was really pleased to see that it's the same firm. The city of Canby, actually, I just used to drive by there all the time, and all of a sudden I looked and went, man, this looks really good. I want to pull off now and go into this place I drove by 100 times. So that's the idea. We got like $1.2 million in urban renewal. This is a $60,000 contract, I believe. They'll come in, do public outreach. Again, very talented. Love their, people were happy with their process and just loved what had come out of it. So that's the proposal.
Well, I have some questions. Allowed now? Is now the time?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I got my arm on and
You
ready to
better.
go.
Okay, first of all, we get one page. You want us to award a contract to people we've never heard of. We're not even quite sure what this greenscape stuff is. We have no examples for.
You don't have the proposal with you. The proposal was not attached.
No, I know, but I mean, this is what we.
No,
have.
you're asking us. No, it was
This
not.
is all we have.
Oh, okay.
And you're asking us to approve it, spend $60,000 when, well, first, right off the top, who's on the selection committee and who appointed them?
Nobody's been appointed yet. Who selected them?
The selection committee. Wasn't anybody from here.
No. So it's always staff selection, but it wasn't even close on cost. But I would suggest if you don't have the proposal, we should table it and you can look at it when you have the proposals.
I would like to see some pictures of what they've done.
Sure. I agree.
I mean, okay, so this is tabled.
Wait,
Motion to table.
wait, I got one question first
Okay.
for you. The total cost of the $66,000, is that just for a plan or is that for everything to be done?
That's for the plan, for the outreach and the plan. It's the public involvement piece is the expensive piece.
Yeah.
This was actually low cost for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because didn't we just drop about 100 grand on light fixtures in Old Town?
Yeah.
And I mean, the one here says evaluation of existing lighting fixtures. Well, if the evaluation comes in to get rid of them, we just threw 100 grand out the window.
No, those are just bullet points from the RFP. Just table this. We'll get you the stuff, get you a better idea. I would also encourage any of you to just Google Coquille Streetscape Project and see what they've done.
Okay.
You know, maybe the group of us ought to take a walk someday and go around town and see what we'd like changed.
Well, some of the biggest problems down there are buildings in private ownership that no amount of,
We can't do
nothing we
anything.
can do,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
And that's the
Oh,
majority
I'm
of,
not looking at you guys.
no, we're not.
No,
We're just, we all know.
no.
But there are things that we can do to change the flow of traffic, to change the way things look. These public investments do spur private investment. That's proven. You could widen one side of the sidewalk on Second, so people could pass each way. The consultant who's, I guess Margaret left with the chamber, she says, you walk into Old Town like you're walking into a store, right? How do you know where I find baked goods? How do I know where I find chocolate? How do I find places as I go? And it's been really, really amazing to just be involved in that conversation. So having a conversation around the public spaces, right? Seems to be a good, if we're going to move forward with spending the urban renewal money, that's what it's there for, to try to raise assessed value. It made some sense to just take a look at what we're going to do. So you've got a set of proposals. Then do we widen the sidewalk? Do we do concrete benches? Do we revise the color scheme? Please.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we could start with these awful cranberry colored benches that are all faded and
Yeah.
even the worst cranberry that's been bleached by sun doesn't look that bad.
Proposal, so you can kind of see what they've done. The basic idea is before we spend urban renewal money down there, it's good to have public involvement and good to have a plan. I think anybody that you can go down there and look and say, yeah, we could potentially use some public investment to make things better. And help, again, and that's the idea is, right, we're going to raise assessed value. The whole idea of urban renewal is we're going
Get
to have this
moving.
rising tide that floats all the boats.
Right.
And as you can see, even the planning is expensive. Doing this stuff's even more expensive. So it seems to make sense to have a good plan with talented people and public outreach to guide you all before we go forward. So that's the pitch for why we did it. But I apologize. You should have had the plan should have been in the packet. That's my fault.
Oh, I have one thing to say. It's not about that, but it's kind of about that. The Marriott facing Second and having the back of their building on First Street, and that's where the parades go. That just seems wrong to me. That's all I'm saying.
People can stay in the motels and watch the parade out
Well, sure they can,
the back window.
but it's,
Maybe there'll be a balcony out there. They put up chairs.
that's one of our main streets, our
cranberries,
main
people.
thoroughfare, going to the beach and the jetty and everything else, and you see the back of a hotel.
So there won't be any
There'll be nothing. there'll
balconies
be-
out on the back.
I don't think there'll be I don't know if there'll be balconies or not. I don't recall.
Yeah.
No, they have to have an equal sort of kind of an entrance facade that way for pedestrians.
Oh, yeah, a doorway.
And with the a double doorway within a little gift shop inside, something that they want to attract people through, potentially work with the cheese factory or anyway.
I'm just saying, I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be ugly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll put a mural.
Well, then there
Big
you
old
go.
mural on the Back.
Big old mural.
I say, wait, the water's over here, but it's over.
I just,
We have the Mount Rushmore we could put your all's faces up there. It'll be the Mount Rushmore abandoned.
But we want them to stay.
Yeah,
I'm not saying go away. I'm just saying.
I don't want street trees, though. That worries me.
No.
When I look at Riverside Drive and the trees, oh my gosh, so we will want to look at, because if they've got street trees, try to say that very
Or
fast.
parking lot
Street
trees.
Trees in the middle of the sidewalk, for example,
No.
you know, we know the problems those cause. All right, so
that design is probably driven by the presence of indigenous graves on that site.
yeah,
They-
I think it is.
They gotta be pretty careful about where they're sinking pilings and
Exactly.
where they're digging in.
Of course.
But they also, I mean, their design team, they like the idea of opening it, having it open up to Old Town.
Yeah, but it's
Um,
one-way streets. That's what's got me
right.
too. There's 2 one-way streets to get the hotel and that's it.
But you could look at that in the streetscape project and change that if you wish.
Oh, I don't know how, but.
Okay.
I mean,
They
people-
should make Oregon Avenue one way, if that's gonna happen.
Hmm.
It's hard getting
good
up and down
point.
there.
That's very dangerous up
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oregon Avenue is.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It'll be a right out only from the hotel, so that
Oh, yeah.
there'll be an exit there
it
going
has to
down
be,
there.
yeah.
All right.
Coming out of the hotel parking lot, you would turn
Yeah.
toward the water to the right. Coming out of the hotel
Go to,
Yeah.
onto Oregon Avenue.
Go down.
talking about the other side.
Well, so where Oregon Avenue is, so you
Oh,
come
sorry, sorry,
out,
sorry.
yeah.
Now we were on the other one. Okay, got
No,
Yeah,
I'm happy to show you at least their
There'll be a
pre-application
competition
plans if you're
and
interested.
then-
yeah, I'd like to. see
It
it.
would be nice to
Yeah,
see.
you
So we're gonna
Yeah,
postpone this until we
Yeah.
can get a,
Yeah,
okay.
all right.
Now we have to accept the Urban Renewal Agency's audited financial report.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Been moved and seconded that we approve the audit. All in favor?
Was there any,
There
No.
were-
it was
No.
okay.
Aye.
And there's the blessed word, adjourn. Dan. Oh, excuse me. Go ahead.
I don't need to take any of this stuff home. That's good.
I'm not, I don't
got
need
a
the
sign.
financial statements. What was in this black thing that we all got?
That's
Oh, the library. The library.
Before you leave, because I know you're leaving tomorrow, I need to talk to you for a little bit. So. Oh, you'll be here tomorrow?
Rafting
All
trip.
right, okay. Okay, because I've got some stuff from the theater group.